All right, my friends, welcome once again to the next episode of the Red Delta Project Podcast live feed Q&A, with another episode to help you be fit and live free. I'm your host, as always, Matt Schifferly. And today's topic, we're talking about 5 of the most insidious traps within our fitness culture and how to break free of them. And I've personally found myself in these myself, and they're oh so tempting. They bait us with the alluring, temptation of results and control and the ability to finally get what we want if we just follow whatever type of path they're leading us towards. But nonetheless, they can certainly kind of snare you, or ensnare, I guess is the word, into this clutch where you feel like you can't get out, but at the same time, you feel like you don't want to. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but here are the top signs that you're ensnared in these fitness traps. First and foremost is a compromise to the health and the quality of mind, body, and lifestyle. As we always talk about here at RDP, that a good approach to health and fitness should improve and enhance the health of mind, body, and lifestyle. But when you're in these traps, your body is breaking down. You're sore. You're achy. I'm not talking about muscle soreness. I'm talking about, gosh, my knees are just always sore. My back is always sore. It's not even an injury. It's just you feel beat up and run down and exhausted. And that's the physical side of things. Mentally, you are losing your momentum and your motivation to continue with those habits. You're feeling burned out. You're frustrated. You look at the training or the diet and stuff that you're doing not as this joyous, fulfilling activity, but as a chore, a slog, something that you're just getting through to check off your to-do list so then you can actually carry on with your life. And compromising health of lifestyle as well, where it's like, gosh, I seem to be having thinner connections with friends and family. People are avoiding me, or when I'm at social functions, that it seems like I'm surly and nobody wants to interact with me as much, or I'm so anxious and stressed out all the time about trying to make sure I stay on my diet, stay on my workout plan. If you're planning a vacation or your family's going on vacation and the whole time you're there, you're like, oh, when am I going to get my workout in? How am I going to stay on my diet if I go to this restaurant? Basically, it's an erosion of your quality of life for mind, body, and lifestyle. And that is one of the number one things that looks like you're in a trap. And I'm not saying this happens all the time. If you're in a trap, this is going to happen because, of course, it's natural. If sometimes you just get burned out, sometimes you're just tired, sometimes these things do happen, but they should be few and far between. I'm talking about chronic occurrences where mental, physical, and your quality of life are just eroding, and it's a process that is constantly eroding too, where you feel like you're just getting deeper and deeper. And that's point number two, or sign number two, that you're in these traps, is that you feel like you have to stick to the program. Like you have to put in the time and the energy and the effort, even though everything within you is screaming to stop or reduce the stress. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, but if I don't do this, then I'm going to lose gains. I'm going to regain weight. I'm going to go backwards from what I've accomplished. And sometimes the only thing that you see possible that you can do is to go further into the trap, to double down and engage in more of the habits that ensnare you even further, kind of like those old Chinese finger traps, right? Where you bring your fingers closer together and you can't pull them apart, but you can still bring them closer together still, which only means that you get more trapped in the device. And a lot of these habits are exactly like that, where you feel like, I want to get out, I can't get out, I'm putting in all this time and effort, I'm compromising the health of mind, body, and lifestyle. And yet, the only thing I can possibly seem to do is just do this thing further and further. And so you feel like you're just getting sucked towards oblivion with these sorts of things. And those are the top signs. And all the traps are the same thing because they're easy enough to get into. They're easy enough because they start off with good intention, where you're like, okay, I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start doing this diet and everything. And you do get results, and it is good for a while. It is something that is very rewarding. You're like, all right, this is kind of good. I'm kind of enjoying this. And so you get deeper in. and deeper in and deeper in, not really aware that things are eroding at the seams, not really aware that what was working at first to get better results is no longer really working all that great, despite compromising your mind, body, and lifestyle even more. And then before you know it, you wake up one day and you're like, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. I don't know how much more I can do of these things. And ultimately, you either stay trapped, you go further in, or the other option, of course, is you quit. Sometimes the stress and the anxiousness and the pain, if it's physical pain and stuff, it just becomes too much, and you're like, you know what, screw it, I'm done, I've had it with this, and you give up on whatever was in the trap. But the problem there is you're also giving up on the hope or the objective of the results that you want. So you're alleviating yourself of the negative stuff that was causing you a lot of stress, but at the same time, you're also giving up all of the good stuff. And now you're just saying, well, I guess I'm never going to lose the weight. I guess I can't build the muscle. I guess I can't get the results that I want. And then you start telling yourself negative stories and sequences in your mind that reinforce an inability, which is false, about what you can actually do. So that's kind of like, I guess you could say, getting stuck in yet another trap. Yes, you're no longer ensnared in the vice that is the habits that I'll be discussing here shortly, but now you're stuck in your own limitation and convinced yourself that it's not possible. And what we're going to talk about today is why these traps are happening, but more importantly, how do you get out of them so you don't have the stress and the anxiety and the pressure that comes with being in the trap, but you also can get far better results otherwise. Because one of the things about these traps is that they tempt you with ultimate control and ultimate results, whatever you're trying to achieve. And at the end of the day, they actually severely compromise your control. They compromise your ability to get results. All the while saying that, no, 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 this is the best way. This is the optimal way. You have to do it this way. And therefore, that's why you feel like you have to keep going deeper and deeper into it. But the approach that we'll be using today, that I'll be telling you about, it breaks you free of all of that. So you don't need to handle all of that stress and anxiety, because that rhetoric is very common in our fitness culture of like, oh, you have to endure, you have to be under so much pressure, you have to suffer and sacrifice. And if you're really miserable, that means you're moving forward and doing the good thing. And when it comes to real, honest, sustainable approaches to getting the best results that you can keep, that's not the way it works. Remember, this whole fitness thing only works if it gets easier over time. This is always my closing statement whenever I'm on podcasts and stuff like that. People are like, what your final words of wisdom, your final take and stuff? It's like, always remember that this whole fitness thing, it only works if it gets easier. It only works if it becomes more comfortable. It only works if there's less pressure and stress on mind, body, and lifestyle. If that pressure maintains, or heaven forbid, even grows, that's always going to hold you back and even erode your ability to get the results that you want. So before we jump into what these 5 traps are, let's get a couple little questions here. Philip Nagy saying, Matt, wanted to go to bed, but I might stay awake for a few more minutes. He says, I had hernia surgery and still have to wait 1 more week before I can slowly start again. Well, good luck with your recovery there, Philip. Perfect timing to restart and refocus. Thanks for all your content and insights. Well, I hope that works really well for you there, Philip. Please do get some rest. Please, when you're recovering from surgery, honestly, sleep right now is a lot better than listening to my voice grate on your eardrums for the next hour or so. So I highly recommend get to bed, get some rest. You're going to do most of your recovery when you are sleeping, and you can catch the audio on these on the replay on your podcast player of your choice. But thanks for checking in, and I hope things recover well for you. So when we're talking about these traps, what are we looking at? Well, the first trap, and I've been in all of these. I've gotten ensnared in them for many years. The first one is the volume trap, or sometimes also referred to as the hustle trap. How much work can you do? And this is a trap that's really easy to get into, because at first, when you're getting started, especially with your exercise, if you're not really doing that much exercise or work, and you knuckle down and you do more, So you go to the gym one more time a week, or you do a few more sets, or you do more reps and stuff, then yeah, you're going to probably get better results, because there is certainly a correlation between how much you put in and how much you get out. But there is a diminishing rate of return. Eventually, you keep putting in more and more and more, and the results just don't scale. Meanwhile, the stress on mind, body, and lifestyle is exponentially increasing. Years ago, when I was practicing Taekwondo on my own as a kid, I couldn't drive to class or anything. So, with my parents' schedule, the only class I could attend was once a week. And that was okay. But then my instructor said, you'd be better off if you did it twice a week. And so, really knuckled down. My parents made the sacrifice to drive me to class, and training from once a week to twice a week made a hell of a difference. It was a big difference. I was like, oh, wow, now I'm really starting to understand this stuff, and I'm starting to get a lot better. And so then the school moved closer to where I lived, and I could ride my bike to class. And so I went from twice a week to 3 times a week. It's like, oh, wow, okay, better still. Not quite as big a jump as once to twice, but still good, still good. Then I'm really gonna go and do it 4 times a week. Oh yeah, 4 times a week. And at that point, I had started to learn to drive, so I'm like, okay, now I can drive myself to class 5 times a week, 6 classes a week. I'm gonna do 2 classes, and eventually, it started to get really hard on my schedule. Especially, I had school, I had a part-time job working at a grocery store, and sometimes they would schedule me over classes that I wanted to take and stuff, and I was always stressed and anxious. I'm like, I can't make 5 classes a week, oh no. But if I was really honest with myself, like, was I really getting that much more benefit going from 4 to 5 classes a week? Not really, no. It really didn't make all that much difference, as opposed to, like, if I just did a workout on my own, on the heavy bag in the basement instead. So the amount of stress that I was exhibiting on mind, body, and lifestyle from that fifth class was exponentially higher, but I really wasn't getting much out of it. Right. And if I was really honest, like 3 to 4 probably still wasn't worth it either. And now here in Denver, I go to a school, and there's only 2 classes a week I can attend. It's the only two available. So I do 2 classes a week. They're an hour and a half each, which is longer than what I had before. But it's fine. That's more than sufficient in addition to the training that I'm doing on my own. So it's something to be aware of. Yes, you can always do more volume. Happens a lot in calisthenics too. I did push-ups every day, then twice a day. Then I went from 50 push-ups to 75 push-ups, then 100 push-ups, then 200 push-ups, and 300 push-ups, and yeah, more, 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 more. And again, at first, doing more will definitely help you, and the cost increase will be fairly negligible. However, there will be a point where you're going to have significantly more stress from doing more work, and it's not really going to help you all that much. But again, you get caught in the trap. You're like, I'm doing 500 push-ups a day, and if I do any less, then I'm going to lose my gains. What little I've gained, but I'm going to lose it. I can't scale back. So the only thing I can do is somehow just knuckle down and really be disciplined and do 600 push-ups a day. And you're just getting further and further into it. And I've certainly been there many times when people were saying, scale back, don't do as much, you take some time off. That would be the worst advice you could give me. I guess I'd throw temper tantrums and be like, I'm not going to scale back. You people are weak. You people don't know what it's like to work hard. You people don't know the sacrifice it requires. You don't know how hard it is for me. I have to work twice as hard to get half the results because I'm not a gifted athlete, yada, yada. I was always making these excuses in my head because a lot of times the hustle culture is just another way to prop up the ego. I'm the hardest worker in the room. I can outwork any of you. But at the end of the day, the guy who wins, or the person who's going to get the best results, is not the hardest worker in the room. They're the best worker in the room. They're the person who can be like, I can work half as much as you and get twice the results. That's how you win, not working yourself to death. Because as I said earlier, this only works if it gets easier. And if your strategy is just to keep working harder and harder and harder and harder, you're on the wrong track. Eventually, it's going to backfire on you. And that is essentially, especially one of those traps where people, well, it leads a lot of people to quit. Be like, I can't do this anymore. There's just no way I can't do it. Like maybe a life event happens or something. For me, especially, it was when I graduated high school, went to college. Like, now college is happening. I have got so much on my plate. I can't do anything. And I figured, okay, my Taekwondo career is over. And no, I scaled back. I only went to class once or twice a week. And of course, I was perfectly fine. I didn't lose hardly anything at all. So the volume trap is always the insidious idea of more. You got to do more. You got to do more. You got to do more. And that's not the way to go about it. And I'll be talking about how to escape these traps here in a little bit because they all have the same solution and strategy. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, more volume, more hustle, go, 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 more, more, more. There's a point where it's just not going to be worth it. Federico, it's good to see you. Hey, Matt, nice to watch you again. Thank you. How can you tell when you are recovered to hit another workout? Very good question. So sometimes you're not going to know 100%, especially at first. This is where beginners are better off with a little bit more structure in their program or their routine because it's like, well, I don't know when I'm quite ready. I don't know when I've rested enough. I don't know. So you could have an arbitrary number like, okay, rest a muscle, don't work it again for 3 days. And then you can hit it. I know a lot of times there's this idea out there of, you've got to rest for an exact amount of time. And then if you go 10 minutes beyond that window, you're going to start losing gains and stuff. It's not that way. A lot of times it's much bigger window where it's like, okay, you could rest for 2 days. Hell, you could probably rest for 4 or 5 days, still be fine. Rest a whole week for all you care. The point is that you want to be hitting your workouts, and this also goes in the micro as well of how much do I rest in between sets. The objective is to recover enough so that when you do the exercise, you can really smash the mother living hell out of it. It's not going to be like, oh, okay, here we go. Oh gosh, I'm really not up for this. But once you down a bottle of Advil and you spend 30 minutes warming up and you're foam rolling and you do your mobility work and you do 100 other things, and then you can finally exhibit a lot of stress and work upon your body, it's like you probably need more rest. Yeah. And a lot of times with the risk of overgeneralizing, most of us need more rest than we think. Yeah, I'm usually in that statement. And you can also just simply, if you're tracking your workouts, you should be making some sort of progress in your workouts. It shouldn't be feeling so stagnant. You should get to it. And this happens all the time where guys will like be ill or they'll take a vacation and they're like, oh no, I didn't work out all week. Oh gosh, it's going to suck going back to the gym. And they go back to the gym and they absolutely PR everything. It's like, whoa, it's like, yeah, that should tell you something. So when in doubt, go a little bit more on the resting side of things because you should feel at least good in your workouts. You should at least have that. You should feel, I always use the term hungry. Like when I'm well rested, my muscles literally feel like they're hungry for the work. You know how when you're really hungry and you get that first bite of food and it's just like, oh God, I needed this. Oh, it's the best thing ever. Oh, it's so satisfying. And oh yeah, this is so nice and stuff. Your muscles should feel somewhat like that when you're working out. They shouldn't feel like, oh, all right, let's do this. Let's get it over with. Let's get it done. Okay. That's usually a sign of, again, you're in that trap to some degree. So basically, I would say you want to feel good in your workouts. If you're not feeling good in your workouts, you're still sore, you're still tired, you're still unmotivated and stuff, give yourself another day or two, see what happens. Lou Ray coming on saying, Matt, do you have a rule of thumb for working out or not when you're recovering from sickness or on the verge? Sometimes I feel that it improves your symptoms and sometimes not. Very good. Yes. So my general rule of thumb I give my clients sometimes when they come in and they're like, I don't know, I'm recovering, or I might be kind of coming down with something or whatever. I always give them this rule of thumb. It's like, our goal is you should leave this workout feeling better than when you went into it. You should have more energy, more enthusiasm. You should feel better, basically. And I always tell them, I was like, we're going to decrease our volume a little bit. We're not going to push quite as hard. We're going to go with a full body deal in a circuit. So usually I'll say like, okay, you got push-ups, you've got rows, and you've got split squats over here. You're going to do one circuit of those. After that, we reevaluate and be like, how you doing? You okay? You good? Because that way, if they're like, oh man, I'm just not feeling it, oh gosh, my body's not ready. Great, you got everything. You still got a full body workout in with each of those. So you can cut it there versus if you were doing like, okay, I'm gonna do 5 sets of push-ups first. And after 3 sets of push-ups, you're like, there's no way, I'm just tired, I'm exhausted, I'm not gonna do this. Okay, great. But all you did was push-ups. You didn't cover as much ground. So circuit, basic compound movements. Don't do the cardio stuff. The cardio stuff usually just drags you down even further. My rule of thumb is keep the intensity high when you're not feeling good. I know that sounds backwards, but when you go with more volume and low intensity stuff, you can just slowly keep driving yourself into the ground endlessly. But when you go with the higher intensity stuff, like a good strength workout, keeping the reps like 6, 8 repetitions or so, you'll probably be fine and good. And then maybe you'll start to hit that wall. And that's when I tell clients, like, I don't care if we work out for 20 minutes. If you're starting to be like, oh man, now I'm starting to really go downhill, you're done. You're done. The second you start feeling like you're on the way down, you don't force it. You don't say, well, I'm going to finish it off, I'm going to be disciplined or stuff. No, that's not discipline. You're just being obedient. You put the workout in charge rather than yourself. So as soon as you start to feel yourself circle the drain, so to speak, you're done. You stop right then and there because you want to finish the workout before you start to feel worse. You want to end it sooner. Because yeah, sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out. Sometimes it feels good. It's like, man, I just, did a 500 meters on the row and some pull-ups and some lunges, 2 or 3 sets of that, and I'm actually feeling pretty darn good right now. It's like, there you go. That's mission accomplished. Don't worry about following the program. Don't worry about what am I supposed to do to optimize it. No, you're just trying to feel good. And if in that first couple of sets you're like, man, I'm really not feeling good, then you're done. You're done. Get some rest and try to come back stronger. Last couple here, Matt. Oh, I just addressed that. Excusez-moi. And Philip, once again, coming in saying, what do you think of self-resistance, isometrics, isotonic, isotension for recovering or additional training? How would you track progress except for obviously adding time under tension? First and foremost, I know a lot of times these things get under the isometrics name, but they're not. They're not even close. And isometrics are when you're not moving. If you're moving at all, it is not an isometric. So we just want to make that clear, because I know some people will accuse me sometimes of being lost up in the semantics of labels and names and stuff, but that's really important, because sometimes the names and the labels and stuff lead us astray into habits that are not effective or conducive for us, because we're going off of an idea rather than what's actually factually happening. So if I'm, doing, like a self pit muscle against muscle kind of thing back and forth, like holding one arm down while I'm trying to do bicep curls, that is not an isometric. That's just strength training. That's just straight up dynamic, regular, good old fashioned strength training. You're just using a different source of resistance. And remember that most forms of strength training, they're all the same thing anyway. Weights, bands, calisthenics. The only thing you get from these things is resistance. That's all. That's all they supply. They don't do anything for you. All they're doing is supplying resistance, which necessitates, it does not create, it only necessitates the amount of tension in the muscle, because the tension is actually created from your nervous system. And you can do anything as long as you're getting tension. That's what makes the exercise effective. Doesn't matter necessarily how or why. And you're probably going to find that some methods are just easier for you to generate that tension. And that could be some of those methods that you were mentioning. And so that's why you should do those, because whatever's easiest works best. Whatever helps you achieve that objective works best, full stop. If it's not easiest for you, if you have a harder time really pushing like your muscular work capacity with those methods, then no, it's not going to be as effective because it's not as easy for you. And as far as tracking, well, maybe not. Maybe not. I know I'm big on tracking and log. I've got the adaptive training log system that I've developed over 10 years. That's available over at Red Delta Project and stuff. And I'm always like, track. The fact of the matter is, though, no, you don't need to absolutely track everything. You can certainly make progress, because ultimately your ability to get results does not come from tracking or measuring and stuff. I know there's that idea out there of if you're not measuring stuff, then you're going blindly and stuff. That's completely false. It's not at all in the slightest bit true. You do need some way to assess and analyze what you're doing and have some sort of plan on how to progress moving forward. That you do need. Do you have to have a workout log? No. Do you have to have fitness trackers and stuff? Absolutely not. Do you even need quantifiable metrics? Not in the slightest. Again, Taekwondo, martial arts. There's a million healthy or fitness systems out there that are supremely effective and fantastic, and they get great results from and stuff. And they're not tracking or measuring diddly squat because they're still looking at it going like, okay, so what are we doing? How are we doing the side kick? Let me take a look at that. Okay, yeah, upon assessment here, you need to get your hip over more. Okay, so I make progress by rolling my hip over more? Yeah, no, not like that. Like more like, yeah, there you go. There you go. Okay, yeah, like doing it like this. So, okay, then you're in class the next time, you're like, okay, roll my hip over more. There it is. There you go. Oh, yeah, that's feeling more powerful. You're not tracking or logging anything, but that doesn't matter. You just need to have the wherewithal of like, how am I doing it and how do I do it better? That's what leads to progress and progression. Yeah, it can be easier and more effective if you have quantifiable metrics that you're recording in a log, but you could just have a workout log where you're just writing out paragraphs, a journal. Like, okay, did my isometric workout today. Notice that if I keep my shoulders back behind my ears, I can get more stress in my deltoids and there's less tension in my sore shoulder. Great. Then you look at that in your next workout and you're like, all right, shoulders back, shoulders back. Okay, shoulders back. That's right. Okay. And you're practicing. That's what leads to results and progress, not whether or not you're actually tracking or measuring things all the time. Okay. So, next trap, the cardio trap. I've talked a lot about on this channel here. Cardio trap works like this. You do a lot of cardio, you're running, cardio in the gym, bike riding in my case, right? You're doing a lot of exercise, lot of exercise. Got to burn the calories, got to burn the fat, got to burn a lot, got to burn a lot, got to burn a lot. But the thing is, you're also eating a lot because you're burning a lot, because you're eating a lot, because you're burning a lot. And that's what I got caught in, particularly in college, is I was doing a crap ton of cardio and I was eating a crap ton of food because I was eating so much food because I was doing so much cardio. I was doing so much cardio because I was eating so much food. And both sides of that cycle are exhausting because it takes money and time and some degree of energy and stuff to eat a good amount of food. And it also takes time and energy and sometimes money to do a lot of cardio. So you're exhausting your resources on both ends. And it feels like each one is feeding the need of the other. And again, it's the need of, okay, in order to get ahead, I'm going to do even more cardio. But now I'm ramping up my calorie intake in order to sustain that. And so I got to do more cardio. I got to eat more. And so it just is an endless cycle that's exhausting and beats you up for the same reason. And that's why it's very much the trap. There's also the dietary trap. And the dietary trap is often, again, starts off very gentle. You're like, okay, I'm gonna start to eat better, eat better. I notice my diet, honestly, it could be better, right? Okay, so I'm gonna cut out soda. Good. All right, I usually eat a candy bar at break time, so I'm gonna have a piece of fruit instead. Okay, very good. And I'm gonna make sure I've got breakfast protein in my breakfast. Okay, good. So a lot of this stuff starts off very, yeah, good, good. These are good ideas. I see nothing wrong. That's fine. But again, it's, well, that certainly is helping. I'm losing a little weight. I'm feeling better. My mind is sharper. I'm not crashing in the middle of the afternoon. Okay, so let me do a little quote research, aka read celebrity diet books and see what people are doing on social media. And I'm going to get rid of even more sugar, and I'm going to get rid of even more carbs. And the cycle continues, and you get further and further in the trap. And before you know it, you're worried about eating carrots, or you're terrified of like, oh, is there too much sugar in strawberries? What about raspberries? Which one should I eat, kind of thing. And so it starts off easy, it starts off good and healthy, but then it starts going into murky and unproductive territory. The term often describing this sort of thing is orthorexia. It's basically where you take healthy eating habits to an unhealthy level, and they're no longer healthy for you. But they started out as such. So, of course, if some is good, more is always better. But that's not how much in fitness and life actually works. So that's the dietary trap. Usually, characterized by a restriction. There's a single type of food or ingredient that you're restricting, or you're restricting calories, or you're intermittent fasting. And then you basically, instead of doing more, it's less of the thing, less of that, less. How do I eat less sugar, less carbs, less calories, less. And cutting back is kind of like cutting back expenditures when you're trying to balance your household budget. If you've got extraneous luxury and things that you're spending, yeah, cutting back can be a relief. Cutting back can give you more room at the end of the paycheck, at the end of the month. Cutting back on how much you're eating can certainly bring relief, but eventually you cut back so much and now it's bringing stress. It's like, okay, I need to cut back even more, so no more electric bill. I'm just gonna have them cut off the power, kind of thing. And eventually you're starting to cut into things that don't really help you all that much, but they really compromise your quality of life. And the same thing is with diet. When carbohydrates started to become vilified, a lot of people started cutting back carbs and stuff, and they felt better and they lost weight and everything was much better. And they're like, great. And they kept cutting back and back and back. And then I'd see someone, several weeks or a couple months later, and they'd be like, oh, I feel like absolute crap. Like I can't run for anything. I'm so exhausted all the time and stuff. It's like, yeah, my carb limit's so low. It's like, maybe let's try adding some rice to that diet. Let's get some more fruit. And you're like, no, you have any idea how much sugar's in a banana? Oh my gosh. I'm like, trust me, I've never known a single person to be obese because of bananas. It's like, oh man, I used to have 6-pack abs, but whoo, those bananas really did me in. No, not likely to have happen. But nonetheless, you're still on the train of less. I heard something to the effect the other day that when your game plan is not to achieve an objective, but to just keep going in a direction, more, less, then you don't know what you're doing. You have no point to what you're doing. You're just assuming that more or less is actually better. That's why a fundamental approach here at Red Delta Project is liberating, because it gives you an objective. It says, this is what you're trying to do. Eat what you need to do, train how you need to train to achieve that objective, and more or less or whatever beyond that isn't going to help you. Recognize that. And that's part of how you get out of these traps. There's also the program trap. This is usually, I didn't fall too much into this one, but this is usually the kind of trap that people fall into when they're really trying to, quote, science their way into their workouts and optimize everything. It's like, okay, so what if I did 5 sets of 7 repetitions for 12 days, and then on the third phase of the moon, I shifted over to facing northwest for 8 sets of 6 Basically, they're trying to change the variables around so many different ways to perfectly dial in the combination to what they want. And this can screw you over in several ways. The first of which is you're always trying to figure out what that program's supposed to be, so you never take action, because it's paralysis by analysis. Like, I don't want to start working out until I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Or you have that, quote, supposedly perfect workout or routine, and then you can't veer from it whatsoever. Like, okay, 3 sets of 12 repetitions. That's the best for hypertrophy. That's what I'm going to do till the day I die. Well, there are certainly many instances and many reasons for building muscle that you should be doing fewer repetitions with heavier loads, or more repetitions with lighter loads, or more sets or fewer sets. There's every variable you give me in a workout, there's plenty of reason to go above and beyond that variable. Work out once a week, sure. Work out every day, sure. But we get fixated on the right way, in quotes, the correct way to do something. And when we do that, we get locked into the program and we don't allow ourselves to explore variables that we need to in order to keep moving forward. So you get trapped by the program. Also happens in diet, right? Where it's like, okay, this is the optimal protein intake, so many calories per so many grams per pound or kilogram of body weight. It's like, there's plenty of instances where you should be eating more protein. Or there could be instances where you don't need to eat as much protein, but you never know that because you heard from an influencer or read somewhere, it's like, this is the one correct way to do things, and you limit yourself to that one correct way. So that's a program trap. And then finally, in the strength world, we have the weight or resistance trap. where you basically have a level of resistance that's oftentimes quantifiable, and you hitch your egotistical wagon to it, and you're like, okay, I bench press 225, and I'm never veering from that ever. I'm always going to bench 225. If I'm warming up, 225. If I'm having higher volume days, 225. Always bench pressing the same exact weight, because that's, again, we think it's optimal when it's not. There's plenty of times when you should be lifting lighter, when you're improving technique, when you're going higher volume, when you're trying to just get a better pump, when you're trying to use explosiveness, when you're trying to give your joints a rest, when you're using periodization. There's lots of reasons you should lift lighter. There's also lots of reasons you should lift heavier too. You're like, nope, 10 repetitions, that's the best way to go about it, and so on. So we get locked into using a given level of resistance, and that's going to hold you back. So how do you break out of these traps? Well, basically, we have to learn the lie that is the lure or their bait of what they are. So most of these will promise that if you go for the bait of volume or cardio or diet or whatever, that's going to give you control. And that's just a flat out myth, because there is no single variable that has a direct outcome to what you want. Instead, it's going to be much more of many things that leads to what you want. So yeah, sure, volume, diet, your program that you're following, weight and resistance, all these things are important, but they're by no means even close to the whole story for what you're trying to accomplish. And understanding that means that you don't go for exclusively that bait in the trap, saying this is the one thing that matters most, and I have to put all my attention on this. Instead, you're saying, okay, volume's important, but so is intensity, and so is programming, and so is diet, and so is all these other things that you can then look into. And that's what's going to be the thing that will get you out of the trap, because you're saying this is important, but I also need to pay attention to other things. So I'm going to use enough volume or enough resistance and get what I want. But I'm not going to just keep following that down an endless rabbit hole of making myself follow that until I'm compromising the health of mind, body, and lifestyle. And that's how you can get out of it. Is like, okay, yes, cutting back on sugar, helpful, great, but only to a point. And there's a hell of a lot more to health and weight management than sugar, which not only does a multi-influential approach produce vastly superior results, because you're now addressing many things that are a part of the puzzle, but you're also not trapped into over-relying on that one thing. And that's why a multi-influential approach and understanding the fundamental approach to fitness that I talk about in my latest book gets you out of these traps. Because it's not saying, oh, that thing isn't important. It is saying, yeah, volume's important, diet's important, program's important, sugar is important. All these things are important, but not that important. It's not that much of an influence. So don't keep following it down the rabbit hole, thinking it's going to give you the control you want, because it's not, because it can only influence so much. And it's going to give you the results you want, which it's not, because it can only produce so much influence on the fundamental processes that are responsible. One more question here, wrapping up real quick. CE, thank you very much for the tip, my friend. What are your thoughts on working out when fatigued? Are you better off pushing through, take a rest day, better workout the next day? Well, it depends on what your goals are, of course, because a lot of times programming stuff is all about managing fatigue, and sometimes fatigue can help, sometimes fatigue can hurt. Generally, though, it hurts. Generally, though, if you're really tired and exhausted, you're just not going to bring as much to your workouts and produce as much of a stimulus. So usually you're better off resting. Usually you're better off giving yourself a little bit more time to recover so you can crush the next workout. And sometimes you're like, well, it's unavoidable. Like, okay, like I did a stage race one time on a road bike, 4 days, a race every day. On that last day, my legs were dead. I was exhausted. I could barely turn the pedals. But I didn't get a choice. I had to do that race, fatigued. So, I did. I didn't do very well, but I did it. I forced myself through it in order to complete the stage, the race in general. So generally, you're better off resting, but don't force it if you don't have to in order to achieve the objective. So there you go, folks. The traps, the Insidious fitness traps. Don't forget that this audio program will be re-released on the podcast directory of your choice in the next couple of days. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming on. I have to run to make an appointment, but I hope to have this again every week. And also, I usually do a podcast again on Wednesdays as well. So this is Matt Schifferly reminding you to sign off, be fit, and live free.